Chapter 21. The Tragedy Continues. Several people in Bledsoe County, including his relatives, later said that Crave Talbot actually was the person who planned, organized, and ordered the trip to kill, harm, and gouge. Several also said Crave was a coward because he sent his brother and 3 friends to Hampton and didn't go himself. He didn't go when they placed the dynamite under Harmon's car either. Some of his relatives never forgave him. One person said, Crave was a coward unless he had some backing. Late in life, Crave Talbot reportedly told some of his relatives that he planned and gave the orders for the sinister plot. Then, why was he acquitted? Lee Walker's long and detailed confession statement was the main evidence in the trial. Lee evidently wasn't involved in much, if any, of the planning. Therefore, he either could not implicate Crave or chose not to. Detectives asked Lee 438 questions, many of them involving Crave. Ulysses Walling was shown and read Lee's confession prior to giving his confession. It's believed Ulysses knew more about Crave's involvement than Lee did. Authorities asked Ulysses only 86 questions, and Crave's name was not mentioned in a single one of their questions. It appears the detectives may have been negligent in not grilling Ulysses about Crave's involvement. Ulysses may have noticed Lee had not implicated Crave, so he didn't volunteer anything about him either. The Elizabethton Star newspaper indicated Crave Talbot's lawyer, Sam Price, delivered an eloquent address on behalf of his client. Price built up his points as one by one as he warmed up, and his thundering voice rose until he could be heard outside the courtroom. Price loudly proclaimed, "You cannot point to one evidence of this case against Crave Talbot." They said Crave was the brains of the dynamite plot, but what witness testified to that? Crave Talbot stayed active in county politics and even served as sheriff of Bledsoe County from September 1945 to August 1946. He was elected and served as road commissioner of Bledsoe County from 1948 to 1952. Crave didn't like it because Lee Walker's confessions sent his brother to the electric chair, but when Lee was released from prison, Crave did not challenge him, probably because he believed Lee would kill him. Unlike his brothers, Crave was said to have been a coward. Crave knew Lee was not afraid to kill someone because he killed Jim Walker in 1931. The men's main objective was to kill, harm, and gouge. If they'd killed only him, the explosion would never have been the huge story it became. Even though Crave was not aware of Harmon's absence from the home, he surely knew that Harmon's wife and 3 little girls would be home and would also be killed or seriously injured. Why did he want to harm the entire family? White Miller Talbot was scheduled to be transferred from the Elizabethton jail to the state prison in Nashville on the afternoon of Monday, March the 21st, 2.5 weeks after the trial. Sheriff Moreland had received word that there was a plan to free him by the Talbots. They were to hijack the car, transporting him as it passed through Crossville. In order to foil the plot, Moreland securely transported White Miller to Nashville early Sunday morning with Highway Patrolman Boone, State Coroner Porter Nave, Deputy Paul Heaton, and Deputy Mike McKinney in 2 cars. The officers were fully armed and on the alert for anyone who might try to free the prisoner. They arrived at the prison safely at noon Sunday, and White Miller was placed in a white-lined cell, where prisoners serving long terms were confined in isolated cells. On April the 13th, 1938, Harmon Gouge was tried for the murder of Arnold Talbot in the same courtroom where the 5 Bledsoe men were tried. A blackjack Arnold was carrying when he was shot was produced as evidence. The jury deliberated less than 1 hour, and only 1 vote was required because they returned a not guilty verdict. Sympathy for the father of the murdered girls was undoubtedly fresh in the minds of the jury members. White Miller Talbot's case was appealed to the state Supreme Court. The court denied the appeal in November 1938, and he was scheduled to die in the electric chair Wednesday, January 11, 1939. For several days prior to the scheduled electrocution, members of the Talbot family were in Nashville to make persistent appeals for clemency to Governor Gordon Browning. The day before the electrocution, a delegation of 34, led by Attorney Lou Pope, visited the governor and made a final plea. Lou Pope was now living in Nashville and had run for governor twice. Even though he was narrowly defeated each time, Pope had built a loyal following and commanded considerable statewide political power and influence. Pope was instrumental in getting Governor Browning elected, and the two were very close friends. At this time, a new governor had been elected, and Browning had only a few days left in his term. He had even moved out of the governor's mansion to accommodate the new governor and was occupying a suite in the Andrew Jackson Hotel in Nashville. On the final night before White Miller was to be executed, Crave Tollett, Sheriff Walter Walling, and the other close friends also had a room or rooms in the same hotel. They specifically chose this hotel because they knew the governor was staying there. Crave, Walker, and their friends were drinking heavily. They called Lou Pope to come to their room. When Lou arrived, they told him they were going to kill the governor if he didn't grant a stay of execution. Walter allegedly pulled out his pistol and waved it around. In the meantime, the governor had suspected trouble from the Tolletts and arranged for 4 highway patrolmen with guns to stand guard in the hallway just outside his room. Lou warned the drunk and angry men from Pikeville not to do anything foolish, and he would go talk to the governor one more time. Lou went to the governor's room, but the 4 guards outside wouldn't let him in. Lou then asked the guards to tell Browning that Lou Pope needed to talk to him. They did, and Browning came to the door. Before Lou could say anything, the governor said, "I cannot stop it. The crime is too serious." Lou Pope's brother, Joe Pope, was the warden of the Nashville prison, the site of all the state electrocutions. Both Pope brothers were from Pikeville and had known the Tolletts all their lives. Lee Pope had been Church Lester's lawyer in the Calhoun Swafford and Coleman Johnson murder case. The afternoon before White Miller was scheduled to die the next morning, he asked his friend, Warden Joe Pope, if he could visit with Jim Hamilton, a close friend from Bledsoe County. Jim, a lifelong moonshiner, was in prison for killing Ease and Blanche Walker. Joe Pope had made Jim and George Walker trustees, and the 2 men were living alone in a small cabin in a minimum security area within the outer perimeter of the prison grounds. About 8 o'clock on the night prior to the scheduled execution, Warden Pope granted White Miller's request, and the prisoner was escorted from his closely guarded cell on death row to the warden's office by guard Leroy Downing, who was also from Bledsoe County. The warden asked Jim if he would agree to let his 14-year-old grandson, Edgar Allen, Ed Lee, sit in on their meeting, and Jim gave his approval. White Miller visited with Jim Hamilton, Warden Pope, and Ed Lee for about an hour in the warden's office while Downing stood guard with his shotgun just outside the door. Ed recalls White Miller talking in detail about the Tolletts family's attempt to kill, harm, and gouge. White Miller said prior to the 2 trips to Hampton to dynamite the Gouge car and home, Crave and their brother Thompson Tollett went there to kill Gouge, but he recognized them and ran off before they could shoot him. Later, after their failed attempt to kill Harmon by dynamiting his car, White Miller said he proposed to his older brother Crave that he and Church Lester go up and shoot Harmon. But Crave vetoed his idea and came up with the plan to dynamite the home. Ed quoted White Miller as stating, "Church and I should have just gone up there and shot and killed Gouge." Jim and White Miller talked about the time they killed Bledsoe County Sheriff Thomas J. Swafford, who was sitting in his parked car on Main Street in Pikeville in 1932. White Miller said, "Jim, you know I went with you to kill Thomas J. Swafford. I had a .45 pistol and you had a shotgun. You done the shooting and I covered you in case some of the friends or deputies came in behind us." These killings and many others will be included in the Jim Hamilton book in this series. Just a year earlier, White Miller was with Jim when Ease and Blanche Walker were killed. Ed recalls White Miller stating, "You know me and T.Y. killed Ease and Blanche," to which Jim replied, "Yes." 2 other people reported after Jim Hamilton got out of prison that he told them he killed Ease, but White Miller and or T.Y. Swafford killed Blanche. There is a possible explanation for this discrepancy. White Miller knew he was going to die in the following morning, and maybe he was trying to help his close friend Jim Hamilton by clearing his name, and possibly getting him released from prison by making the statement in the presence of Warden Joe Pope. At the close of the meeting, Ed said White Miller showed his appreciation to Warden Pope by shaking his hand and thanking him for allowing this visit with Jim Hamilton. That evening, White Miller had a fried chicken dinner with pumpkin pie for dessert as his last meal. Later that night, they shaved his head. Before midnight, White Miller professed faith in God and was baptized by the prison chaplain. White Miller said, I am right with everyone, and I have no enemies. As they were about to take him from his cell and walk him to the room housing the electric chair early the following morning, White Miller told Warden Pope, I'd rather have you go with me than anyone. Normally the warden pulls the switch for the electrocutions, but Pope said, I'd resign before I'd throw the switch on White Miller. Pope was obligated to appoint someone to pull the switch, so he asked an inmate trustee by the name of Skidmore to perform the gruesome task. According to Ed Lee, among the friends and family members who witnessed White Miller's last moments were his parents, Major and Amanda Tollett, his sister Betsy, and her husband John Evett, his brother Thompson Tollett, Warden Joe Pope, and his 14-year-old grandson Ed Lee. It's interesting to know that Crave Tollett was not present for his brother's execution. Just before the final moment, White Miller told the warden, God bless you. Your guards have been good to me. At 5:29 a.m., January the 11th, 1939, the switch was thrown and White Miller Tollett was electrocuted.